It's like you got a lot of stress. You just you don't know your destination. You don't know what's gonna happen next. You don't have any image of what you're gonna face after you cross. And when you cross, you just have like a lot of energy in your body that you just keep you going because and you hear from others what's gonna happen. So you just cross and you keep walking.
We crossed the river to Greece, and then we walked. The first day we walked about 18 hours. We walked a lot. Then the second day and the other days, we just walked in the evening.
Κοιτάξτε, τώρα πάμε λίγο πιο παλιά. Που αυτό μου έχει μείνει και το λέω συνέχεια. Ήταν 2 γυναίκες. Η θερμοκρασία έξω ήταν -3 βαθμούς. Ήταν εξυπόλυτες μέσα στα νερά, μέσα στον πάγο. Και όταν πήγα να τις πάρω και τη φωνάζανε, η μία δεν μπορούσε να περπατήσει. Και την πήρα αγκαλιά με την μπάρκα και την πήγα να τη ζεστάνω στην καλύβα, να τους συνεφέρω τις γυναίκες. Ήταν από τη Σομαλία, ήταν 2 γυναίκες από τη Σομαλία, 2 αδερφές. Όταν πήρα τα ρούχα τους, όταν ξεκίνησα να βγάζω τα ρούχα για να τις δώσω στεγνά, την ώρα που τράβηξα τις κάλτσες από τα πόδια τους, φύγαν και τα νύχια μαζί, από τα κρυοπαγήματα.
In a way, once somebody crosses the Evros, if the temperature is not very high, if the river is deep, and they get soaking wet outside the river in December or March, then they will die. There's very few chances they will not die.
My name is Paulos Pavlidis. I'm professor of forensic medicine, and I'm responsible for the Greek Land Border. I am here from in the last 20 years, 22 years. All these years, the total number from the people who died in the border, it's about 660 people died only from the Greek side. I suppose the same number is from another side, but we don't know that. The most of them, they died from the drowning. After that, the second cause of death is hypothermia. But in the last years, in the last 3-4 years, we have many cases who died from the traffic accident.
Five officer. They came in a jeep. It was like I didn't imagine that. So like, too fast. We've been like running and walking, but they did figure out where we are exactly.
Εγώ προσωπικά όχι, γιατί πάντα ενημερώνουμε στρατό και αστυνομία και μετά κινούμαστε ή κάνουμε οποιαδήποτε κίνηση που μας δώσει ο στρατός.
80% من الناس كانوا يحبقوا يعني. أنا محاول مرتين بالباصات. هم يبلغوا البوليس يعني من قبل يبلغوا البوليس مثلا إذا ركبت معاهم أنا مثلا أو هيك يعني يبلغوا البوليس إنه في شخص هيك.
We see sometimes state agents apprehending people directly after they cross over. So as opposed to jumping right over the border fence, just crossing over the river, sometimes people are apprehended right then. Other times they're apprehended while walking in a local village, for instance, often by racial profiling. And other times people are apprehended in the interior of the country, in the mainland, again, generally by racial profiling. We see raids of buses and trains.
there's abandoned buildings, squats, where the people are living either in large groups or small groups. And this area is heavily policed. So the police come around, almost daily at distribution, we have civilian police coming and watching our activities. And the police, they come around and they try to pick up people without documents. They also do checks of the local area. And actually in June last year, we had an incident where there was a police raid during one of our distributions, and 30 people were collected without documents and pushed back to Turkey the same day. It used to be that pushbacks were kind of like in the footfall area of the border, but as of 2020, everything changed. And especially under the increased restrictions of the pandemic and, the guise of everybody looking in the other direction, we saw pushbacks ramped up massively. And we saw that pushbacks started happening from around the city of Thessaloniki and also in the surrounding refugee camps, like in Dietz. And it's actually become quite a normal process now. Even last week, somebody came who was a brand new arrival. They took food, they took the basic clothes. I gave them a ticket to get shoes the next day. And he never showed up. And he actually called me 2 days later from Turkey, saying that as he left the center after he took clothes, he was pushed back to Turkey. And he apologized for not coming to his shoe appointment.
I don't know what the problem. No.
Even from here in Thessaloniki and
Thessaloniki, yeah. Everybody goes to Thessaloniki, everybody touch police, deport.
So the police are responsible for transferring people who have entered the territory irregularly to the reception and identification center, which is where people are supposed to be processed. So verifying their identity, their country of origin, and processing their applications for asylum. And the local reception and identification center for northern Greece is in Phylakio.
But no asylum give me any. The police are going arrest police station going after one bus, two bus, people explore to deport Istanbul, Turkey.
so they come around with the buses to deport you
Deport.
from here.
This time police arrest me to deport Istanbul, Turkey.
The Phylakio center is very near the border, and we have heard reports that police are escorting people to detention centers and then subsequently pushing them back over the border. So the police being responsible for transferring people to the reception and identification center at the border, it's a cause of concern for us.
هلا انت بتعرف انه دائما الواصلين الجدد لنيو ارايفلز في لهم مركز استقبال قريب من اورسيادا اسمه فلاكيو، وهذا مركز الاستقبال بيعطي معلومات، فيك تشوف منظمات، فيك تشوف محامين. هذا طبعا لك. صار معك هالشيء، اخذوك لمركز الاستقبال شيء ولا كان
لا
فورا يرحلونك؟
فورا يرحلونك. تيجي بتقول له مثلا بدي سندويشه او هذا بيقول لك 50 يورو، وهن بياخذوا بيقسطوك المصاري بيقول لك 50 يورو.
A person who has not undergone reception procedures and is arrested in Thessaloniki it's not provided by the law to be led to Phylakio for the reception condition procedures to apply. He is detained according to the law. He should be detained in Thessaloniki and then maybe to a pre-removal detention center in the northern Greece. So a person who from Thessaloniki is arrested and then driven back to Evros at the same day, this takes place because it's a pushback operation.
والله يا أختي جونا وركبونا بالفوكسة، أخذوا منا التلفونات، أخذوا منا شنطات هدومنا كلها وركبونا بالفوكسة ومشي. قدمنا إن شاء الله على مشفى، بس نقول له ده حاجة لازم علاج. والله أختي ما يفهمون علينا، ما يفهم عليهم شلون. ركبونا ونحس حالنا كأنه إحنا عاد الفكسة مطلقة، ما نشوف شي خالص.
نص الجسر عم وقفونا، نزلوا اليمين. شوفير السيارة ضربوه، وحد شوفير في واحد معنا من الغرف كمان نزلوه، ضربوه على فكرة، كسروا له جزء من الرئيس. صار الدم عن شيء من هون. وصار الدم عن مشوار، وجابوا له مي وهيك يغسل وشه كمان ما يبين الدم على حدا رايح جاي. وبالمخبط تمينا ناطرين شي ساعة وشوي، اجت سيارة بشكل زي الدرمش، بس انه في إلها قلبة من جوا محصنة. يعني كل شخص بيقعد لحاله، بسكر عليه بيقعد لحاله.
منهم لما زتنا بالسيارة شرت صورة تصور خلودة. ليش أولي عندي سؤال؟ قال يضحك. قالوا يضحك. إيه قالوا حرام. شو صار يضحك؟ ترى خلوا صورة منين ترى. يقولون عني إنه هذا إيش هالمخلوق هذا؟ يضحكون علي إنه هذا مو بشر.
هي السيارة من برا مو مكتوب عليها لا بوليس ولا إشي، بس ما بعرف إذا نمرتها مدنية ولا لا، لأنه لما صرنا نعدي على الهيجيسة تبع الطرق ما توقف، بس إذا مر لهم ويضل ماشي.
صار يصيح علي إنه خلني على حيط، قال لي وقف على الحيط ودير وجهك. ظلهم موقفيني شي ربع ساعة أو نص ساعة ما يقارب هيك. لقيت سيارة بيضة للكماندوس وقتها وحطوني بيها ومرة.
The legendary white vans, yes. In any case, they have featured a lot in testimonies of pushbacks, providing some kind of transport. During fieldwork, I saw them everywhere. I want to say everywhere, I mean every police station, border guard station seems to have some kind of white van parked nearby. Poros, they were there, Himonio, they are permanently there, yeah.
So what happens usually is that people are being picked up, let's say Thessaloniki or around. They are taken first to a police station in the city.
ساحة يعني كلها سياحة، كلها مطاعم، والمخفر صاير على الطريق نفسه. فوتونا ونظامي، بوليس نظامي.
Where they are kept for a while until they are transferred to other vehicles who then drive them closer to the land border with Turkey.
مشوا فينا باتجاه الحدود، مشينا شي 4 ساعات تقريبا.
And then often they are detained in another police station somewhere on the way.
To quarantine in the first, then they take us in a big truck to the border in the night,
where they are kept for a few hours up to a few days.
استنونا كنا الضحى، قلت لك الساعة 7 الصبحيات للساعة 4 المساء.
It's a whole chain of officers and police stations and detention sites that are used in those pushbacks.
بعدين قال كل واحد معه موبايل يطلعه ويحطه هان. أخذوا الموبايلات كلها اللي معنا.
They just took all what we have, like phones, power banks, money.
اشترى اليونان، شلحونا كل شيء يعني. شلحونا حتى المصاري أخذوها، بحس الجوالات. أنا قلم الطولي بجوالي.
المعاملة كانت من أول مرة مسكنا فيها الكوماندوس، استلموني حطوني بالمعتقلة. هو كان في كمان كتير جنسيات، كان أكثر من 50 شخص بينهم نساء وأطفال ورجال. كانت المعاملة سيئة جدا 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 مع العالم، يعني سيئة كثير المعاملة كانت. والمحاولات الباقية كمان المعاملة أسوأ بأسوأ بكثير كمان، لدرجة إنه ما يعترفون إنه في بشر قدامهم، يعني ما يعترفوا على هذا الشيء.
When the police catch me, I told him I need a lawyer.
Did you say that you're from Syria?
I tell him I'm from Syria. He asked me, you are from where? I told I'm from Syria.
Did you have document with you, passport?
No, I have my ID.
He have a Syrian ID that telling he's a lawyer. The photo and the name.
I asked him, I need a lawyer. He is Pollák.
He just laughed at him and said, "We will see if you can get a lawyer."
Did you have the chance to apply for asylum or to speak to lawyer or translator?
No. We all the time they are shouting to us.
They took any paper you have, they don't let you. One of the guys I met, they took his passport and cut it in 2 pieces. He was begging for his passport, they didn't turn him back.
واقفين يشلحوا لك هلا الأوراق اللي معك شنو؟ أنا عندي دفتر الهوية السورية، هوية الإعاقة، رابور الطبي عندنا، مثلا الهويات التركية. بس بكل الأحوال إني أصلاً ما سألوكم عنهم. ولماذا هذا أصلاً؟ لو ما يفتشون إيش أنا بحوزتنا بياخذون عبود شنطات بس بحوقوه. لأنه لما جابونا ونزلونا خلود كتن هواتف وكتن شنطايات قالوا هذول بدهم يحرقون جتالنا.
شلحونا وعينا وفتشونا 4 مرات.
And searched them for 4 times with humiliation.
واللي لقوا معهم مصاري ظاهرين أخذوهم.
And they took all of their money.
وهاللي مخبيهم
and who's hiding the money.
أكل قتلة بزيادة.
جابونا لعند هذا المصدر، فقام ينزلونا واحد يفتشونا تفتيش كامل، تشلح خالص، تقعد تقوم 2 3 يضربنا واحد من الضباط ببورية بيضة تمام وقلبها شيء مثل الرمل، لأنه كل ما يميلها كأنه في رمل بقلبها.
He took off my undergarments and he touched me from private places.
فبعد ما صفونا على الحيط اجت سيارة فيها 7 أو 8 أشخاص بيناتهم المهم 3 نساء، تمام، فقاموا فتشوهم. فهذا هو نفسه صار يمد ايديه بصدر النسوان ببطنهن، يعني بأماكن حساسة. فالزلمة الزوج عصب فقام نزله بالأرض وصار يضرب له مكسر له ايديه.
هاي توطى الراس لليونان وكل إنسان يعني اللي عنده إنسانية وعنده.
They beat everyone. They don't care. They just they don't have any shame. They just if you obey their order you are okay. If you don't, then you face the hell on them. You face their anger. They keep hitting you. Even there was Syrian women. She was like hiding her money. They checked her. They were men. They checked her. They found the money. Then slap her on her face.
ياخذون منا الهدوم لما يفسقونا نريد نلبس شو مكان ما يسوونه مكان ما يسلعون يقولوا لا تروحن برا يعني تشوفنا كل الناس هيك معانا هي مو معانا.
Like 1,090 testimonies that exist on the BBMN database, 225 include women, and obviously as a result include children often as well, as young as like months old, carrying in your arms rather than children who are older. But there are a lot of minors that sit around the age of like 10 to 16 and often aren't spared of the violence. And even if they are, they will have their families, they'll watch their families being beaten like their dads or their older brother, or even sometimes the mums. So that mental scar that sits with the children for the rest of their life will just be unimaginable. There was a recent instance on Friday. I took a testimony whereby someone was saying that they were apprehended in Greece, and there were 15 of them who were apprehended as a group of 50, but some of them ran away, and the respondent wasn't able to see what was going on, but could hear the sounds of a baton, like a big baton. He remarked that it was about 3 to 4 feet long, and children screaming and children crying. And then when he was able to be taken up and taken into the back of the van, where they were then taken to the detention site and then consequently pushed back, he could see women crying and they had marks on their arms, and same with the children. So even though often children are spared, it seems to be that some officers are so relentless, they don't really care who they're beating, they will just beat.
During the apprehension and in detention, and during the actual pushback, people usually, and in the cases from Greece to Turkey, it's about 90%, more than 90% of cases that involve one or more forms of violence. And those forms of violence, they usually include beatings with either with hands or batons or sticks, branches, metal poles. There's kicking, there's sometimes electric discharge weapons being used. There are some certain, like, individual instances where people were burned with cigarettes, where they were immersed in water.
ضربني بعصاي قال لي من اخي، يعني هو كان ناوي يضربني على راسي، بس انا بعدت راسي شوي قمت اشت هيك ضربه من هون. هلا انا مره فت لقيت فيها 82 فل، يعني معبايه فوق بعضهم، نسوان واولاد ورجال. هاي المره فت لقيت فيها 6 اشخاص بعد ساعه ونص كانت فل.
The conditions are horrible, and that's why Greece has been condemned very many times by the European Court of Human Rights for the violation of Article 3 of the Convention regarding torture and inhuman and degrading treatment.
أنا عاد أبكي والله أبكي وأترجى وأقول لازم، يعني شفنا سجن قلنا معناته إيش فيه، أريد بس أخذ على العلاج عشان كلهم عن جسمهم يشوفون، بس أدخل لهم هيك يغضون عيونهم هيك. صاروا يشتغلوا ويضحكون علي.
كانوا يعترفوا على هذا الشيء، يعني لدرجة مرة أنه لقونا وكان في طفل تعبان كثير هو أمه كانت حامل يعني، وكنت أنا عم ساعده هو وأمه يعني. قامت تطلب منه، عمره الطفل 3 سنين، كان تطلب منه إنه تقول له أعطينا مي، كانوا معتقليننا هم. قال لها روحوا ارجعوا على سوريا اشربوا مي، كان هيك يحكيها بهاي اللغة يعني، حكاها بالإنجليزي وقت، قال لها روحوا على سوريا اشربوا مي.
فودونا على غرفة تقريبا 4 ب5 صغيرة وبيها تواليت مفتوح بابه بضمن الغرفة يعني. فلغينا قدامنا، نحن كنا هون صرنا شغلة 35 37 بين اللي يجونا 7 8 بعدين. فلغينا لغينا غدنا جوا بقلب الغرفة، ونصهم أفغان، وناس مصلخة وناس شالحة وناس لابسة وفي نسوان. فكنا بهاي الغرفة.
والله المركز هو يعني كان في مكان يعني مش مبين انه مش سكني يعني، مكان زي معزول حاجة زي هيك يعني. فهم كيف؟ حتى انه احنا دخلنا لما وصل الباص نزلونا من الباص، كانت في ساحة كبيرة قدام المركز. في قلب الساحة هذه في غرفة نظام سياج، وأرضيتها بطون.
هو مثل ما فهمنا انه مستودع ذخيرة قديمة.
The thing is, a lot of other hidden detention places, and I think they exist because of migrant testimonies, saying that they were taken to places that look like a stable, a warehouse, or even some kind of military facility.
Garages or some kind of like industrial buildings or abandoned buildings.
In essence, if you take people to a place that is off the radar, nobody will know they are there. The other significant is access to legal assistance, access to healthcare, conditions of detention that are unknown in such places. So there is a host of human rights issues raised.
Recently, the Council of Europe's Anti-Torture Committee, the CPT, visited Evros and again confirmed what we have been saying through our work, that several of these facilities are being used, are in fact designed to be used as places from which people vanish. When they visited it, they found out that the logs that should have been kept for people that were being held there were all empty. So when somebody's taken there, they're not registered. And this is part of a strategy to make people disappear.
You usually have between 50 and 150 people gathered in one small room where sometimes it's so crowded that they cannot even all sit at the same time. Some have to stand while others sit. And that sometimes lasts for several days. During this time, they never have access to food or water. They sometimes have access to toilet facilities, but that's like about half the cases. If they ask for food or water, they are either ignored or they are even teased. There was this one testimony I took 2 weeks ago where the guy described to me that he asked an officer for water, who then put a bottle of water in front of him and said, if you dare to touch that, I will leave you with marks that you will never forget.
There's a military buffer zone that skirts the borderline. So civilians, NGO workers, human rights workers, and researchers such as ourselves are not allowed to access the border per se. So this creates an atmosphere of exception again, and impunity where human rights violations occur as routine.
And this is where a benevolent government or a benevolent authority or a benevolent Europe of nations in solidarity and in compliance with fundamental human rights would say we need to have some monitoring on what's going on there. But that's where you don't have it.
They mean it to just isolate you from the other side, from outside, to never let anyone watch what happened over there. So they just put you in that cell and you will never have access to anything. They will never bring you any paper to sign. You will even, you're right to understand what they were saying, because sometimes they were talking in Greek, and I don't know, but in my experience, I never, met any guy who can understand Greek, but they will never bring to you any translator that explain to you what they were saying. So you just have to be silent and never make a word, though. That's how it's work over there.
اجت سيارة ثانية بالمش فيها 2-3 يونانيين، 3 يمكن يونانيين لابسين لباس جيش، وفي 4 مرتزقة مقنعين سوريين، لأنه واحد منهم يحكي عربي. ال3 ما حكوا ولا كلمة، واحد منهم بيحكي عربي. انت من وين؟ انت من وين يقول؟
This ambiguity around pushbacks is only accentuated by the several military, paramilitary, and police forces and agents that are involved in pushbacks. So you have uniformed police, you have army people and vehicles of the army often being present in pushbacks, but then you have masked men with unknown identities.
There've been instances where these people that are caught in these pushbacks, and before, when they're detained and then taken back to the river, there are these people on the riverside who tend to drive these small plastic dinghies across the river. And they don't necessarily cross all the way to the Turkish side, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they drop people in the middle of the river and ask them to swim, which obviously then has repercussions on the people that have been dropped into the water, because some people can't swim and the current's too strong and people just disappear.
لأنه آخر رحلة هاي اللي بدقق عليها، آخر رحلة بيجيبوها بالبلم ما بيوصلون للنهار، بيكبونا بنص المي وبيرجعوا. يعني هن اللي بيعرف يسبح لحتى يطلعوا، ما بيعرف يسبح راحت عليه.
Third country nationals, they tend to be identified as wearing normally all black, balaclavas, Syrian Arabic speaking or Farsi speaking, so Afghans or Syrians mostly. Not saying that they're the only ones, but I'm sure there are others, but these are the ones that we identify. And there are also instances of these people being dressed in sort of like partial military or police uniforms. So recently there were some with camouflage trousers and civilian t-shirt, but black masks.
قام هذا العرس السوري يجي لابس موت عسكري، يرفع ايده هيك احنا واقفين ويضربها على نص اصابعنا، يضربنا هيك واحد ورا واحد.
The Greek authorities will offer people who they detain to get out of their detention a sort of like, if you work for us for about 6 months, then we'll give you a card or some sort of paper to allow you to stay in Greece.
هو قال أنا حابك تكون جزء من المهربين لأني بتحكي إنجليزي. أعطوني خيارين، إما السجن أو اشتغل معهم هذا الشغل.
And often some people obviously say yes, which I don't blame them for saying yes, obviously because they don't want to get pushed back and then have to try again and try again. But it's become much more of a common theme.
أنا سألته إذا ما بدي أشتغل شو رح يكون مصيري؟ قال لي حنضربك ونرجعك على تركيا، وإذا شفناك مرة تانية حنذبحك.
So basically, they take them out of their detention cell, like usually at night. They take them to the river bank and they let them attack, rob and push those other asylum seekers back to Turkey.
خلوني يصير عبد عندهم لحتى اشتغل بدالهم، لأنهم ما بيخاطروا بحياتهم بيشتغلوا هذا الشغل. فهاي الفترة بحياتي أنا بسميها مرحلة العبودية.
They do the, let's say, dirty job of the authorities in means of pushing people back to the riverbank on the other side.
There was a recent instance where there were 12 identified as third country nationals in a pushback where they actually inflicted beatings onto the refugees and people on the move.
يضربون السوريين مو اليونانيين، كانوا يضربونا. قالوا له أنت كلبهم بالمصاري يعني، ولا إحنا أولاد بلد، أو أنت عربي ما بعرف إذا سوري ولا غير سوري، نحن أولاد بلد، ليه عم تضربني؟ إذا هن ما عم يضربوني. عليه راموا التموا عليه الأربعة ونزلوه بالأرض وصاروا يضربوه بإجريهم.
بالبداية طلبوا مني ألبس القناع فلبسته. رفقاتي بالعبودية خبروني إنه إذا بدك تحمي حالك لازم تلبس القناع مشان ما حد يعرفك.
This practice is still going on, and currently I am investigating another case of 61 people.
We are now 61 people here. And we want Greece government to accept our refuge. Please don't push back us.
In this case, there is some footage, photos that the victims, like those 61 people, shared on that day together with their location information. So we can clearly see on those videos that a group of approximately like 15 people being brought to the location where 61 people gathered after they crossed the river from Turkey.
Şu anda Yunanistan'dayız ve yüzüm askeri insanlar geliyorlar. Uçakla saldırılıyor şu anda. Şu an bıçakla saldırılıyor.
We can also clearly see 3 white vehicles in the military zone. So, like those 15 people speaking like a Middle Eastern language, they cannot make it there by themselves. They are being brought. And based on my investigation, the same group was also used in another pushback incident months before that incident.
المهم صارت هون تقريبا وجه الصبح يعني بالستة 5 هيك شي. اجت سيارة فيها كمان واحد يوناني واثنين من هذول المرتزقة، نزلوا بلم نفخوه وشالونا على دفعتين. قبل ما يشيلونا على دفعتين قربونا على النهر، اليونانيين ما يشترجوا غربوا على النهر، هذول بس السوريين قربونا على النهر فقاموا هون اخذوا منا المصاص العرب.
There has been one instance recently with a respondent I spoke to that the Greek authorities actually vocally said, does anyone speak English? Would anyone like to work for us for 6 months? And if you work for us for 6 months, then we will repay you with allowing you to stay in Greece for, I don't know, a short period of time, for about 6 months to a year or so.
There's an ecosystem of actors that participate in a pushback, and this only makes it harder to pinpoint accountability and responsibility for these cases.
We are on the shore waiting for the Greece authorities. The kids are crying and the situation is so hard, so please help us.
Back in spring last year, there were a few instances of the use of the islands in the Evros River. And then more recently, as of October, there were a string of cases, and now it's become a bit more of a trend that we identify through BBMN's testimonies. So, for example, there are little islets or islands that vary in size from like 100 meters to sort of 50 meters, sometimes slightly smaller, with trees and forest. And the Greek authorities will take people across on a boat to the island, and then they get kind of stuck in limbo land between the Greek side and then the Turkish side, and then often the Turkish authorities and the Greek authorities stand on each side and will not let people cross.
صرنا 10 أيام بين الجزيرين، بيناتنا 30 طفل، من بيناتهم هلا بس 10 صحيانين، كله رايح، كله خالص، لبكره رح يموتوا، ما رح يضل ولا طفل، لا شرب لا أكل، نسوان كلها قاعدة ما فينا تقوم، رجال ما فينا تساوي شيء، ما حدا عم يرد علينا، لا الكوموندوس، لا الأمم المتحدة، لا اليونان، لا الأوروبا، لا أي حدا. ردوا علينا كرمال الله، ردوا علينا كرمال الله، شوفوا حالة الأطفال، دنيا عم تشتي، دنيا مطر، كرمال الله ردوا علينا.
And they're deterred because the water level's quite high or the current's quite strong. Some people can't swim, and sometimes they fire warning shots either into the water, both sides, or into the air to stop people from trying to cross.
Registration from Turkey, not from Greece.
أنتوا جايين من تركيا عادي.
لا بدنا نروح. إحنا حكينا مع المنظمة GCR.
We talked with the human rights and GCR. They came.
I am telling you for last time, you must go back.
لا بدنا نروح. Sit. Do you speak English?
Do you speak English?
Can you speak English?
We called the GCR and the human rights. We are waiting for the police. Please, can you understand me? We called the GCR and the human rights. We are waiting for the police. And the European court told the police to come here and help us. We are waiting. Please, can you understand me?
How many of you? How many people?
We are 94 people.
What?
About 100 people.
100.
Okay, 94. Exactly 94 people.
Where are you seeking all of them?
We are all from Syria.
All from Syria?
Yes.
All of us. There is a lot of children and women with us.
أنا بكري من ريف حلب، أخوه علاء الله يرحمه.
وصلوا الغابي على أخوي هوني مرض، ما عرفنا إيش السبب يعني صار معه. يعني طبعا هو ما بدخن، يعني ما هو مدخن، لا بدخن ولا تعب. الآن تعب أخي هوني، رفعاته تخلوا عنه، رفعاته اثنين كانوا على أساس طلعوا معه إنه نحن رايحين سوا وبنضل سوا، وهذا الآن شافوا وقع تخلوا عنه، ضلوا ماشيين وعافوه بالغابي، ضل حاله. هي الصور، هي يعني كان عند انقذوه، هي مشطح على الارض. كان بالصدفه في معن دكتور مصري، شربوه شوربات، صحصح هون حالته تعبانه كانت، على صحصح شوي، على شدناه على ظهرنا وطلعنا فيه، ما بنحسن رجعوا معنا. بعثوا لنا نداء للسلطات اليونانيه اول ما ضل في الغابي، بس ما سجوا يعني له منطقة أرينا في أحد الوديان اليونان في الطريق البري. تم إرسال بريد إلكتروني في الساعة 3 إلى السلطات اليونانية وما سجب.
وهاي المناطق اللي قدامهم يعني من أحد الزفت لما تنزل، أقرب منطقة عليه يعني إنه أتوقع إنه بيها شو اسمه بيها مغفر وياخذونه عليه هناك، أتوقع ماخذينه على أريانا. إنه المناطق اللي قدامهم نطلع عليها هاي كلها قرى صغيرة، يعني ما يصير لي بيها نوم مغافر ولا شيء، ما يصير بيها. يعني ما مر علي هناك، ما شفته إلا على النهر، بعد سجن ما شفته هناك بالسجن. لما أخذونا بيسجون جنب النهر، السجن الأزرق وسجن أبيض يقتلونه هناك. أنا ما شفته من الرجال هذا ما راح مقطعون النهر تحت بحر تركيا. تمام. جيت عند النهر هناك تقطعونا، فلقيتهم عند النهر عند 6 بوابة عند المطار ترمي لقيتهم.
معنا اطفال وجهاز الفراخ ضرب علينا رصاص وما خلوا النسوان تعبر. وصلنا 5 ايام لا هم خلينا نرجع ولا خلينا نروح. حرمة حامل.
Allegations have also been brought to UNHCR's attention of individuals or whole groups that have been forcibly returned from Greece to Turkey via sea or land borders at great risk to their lives. We have also been aware of reports of alleged informal summary expulsions from Greece's mainland. These concern cases of asylum seekers being removed even from distant cities, or persons taken from reception and identification facilities on the mainland and then brought back to the borders. Many of these persons reported violent treatment, beatings, and theft of their personal belongings before their removal. UNHCR have officially raised such reports with the competent authorities in anticipation of proper investigation. We have also called for preventive measures against such practices, including clear rules at the borders, independent monitoring mechanisms, capacity building to the newly recruited staff, police officers at the borders, and also thorough investigation of such incidents.
Once again, is this being executed though? Are measures being taken case? Are currently actions being launched against the Greek police or military who has been alleged to illegally push back these refugees? And also, is the investigation thoroughly thorough?
This is something we're asking and continue to ask for a thorough and proper investigation of such incidents.
In your experiences, once again, how cooperative has the Greek government been in following through on these proceedings?
We have raised such reports with the competent authorities. For the moment, as far as I know, there are still investigations ongoing, but as far as I know, I don't know if there is an official report on that issue.
For one to start talking about the procedures that follow, accusations or allegations that a pushback took place, one needs to focus down a little bit on accountability and what accountability means or non-accountability means for the Greek security forces. Basically, one of the open wounds, let's say, of the judicial and procedural problem that we have here in the country is that the first line of investigation always happens internally. So basically, if the police or the Coast Guard or any other security forces personnel commits or is allegedly committing a violation, their own superiors, their own rank officers will be the first ones to decide whether this is happening or not. And I'm saying this because this has been a pattern that we see when it comes to police violence in the city, but also when it comes to pushbacks in the border areas. So we see a complete disregard of an actual procedure. We see a complete lack of an actual procedure.
Pushbacks have been reported for several years, but because of this particular ecology of exception and this visual regime, this obscure visual regime, there are very little pieces of visual evidence to prove this.
The fact that anybody that's pushed back, the first thing basically that happens is your phone is taken, broken. And so that makes it much harder to support your case than you could if you had geolocation, if you had photos, videos, etc.
It's very difficult to bring a case forward when the victim is in another country and where there is no single track of an arrest, of an apprehension, of detention, or of the return itself.
Out of those cases that provide you with the needed evidence and the material and also the willing named testimonies, how many of those cases get then actually being to end with a conviction after trial?
We don't have any conviction because we don't have any trials yet. Okay, that is very important to understand that although there are cases which have a good ground for them to lead to a proven testimony, they usually are not dealt with as they should be dealt with.
How can one start talking about the NTA? How can one begin to grasp how the NTA became the investigative agency or authority of sorts for pushbacks in Greece? How a semi-independent authority became this washing machine, if I may say, for the pushback allegations. Basically, the agency, which has a totally different mandate, has no reason whatsoever in any way under its mandate to investigate pushbacks. The National Transparency Authority made this report, which was to try not to investigate, in my opinion, whether pushbacks happened or not, but whether we, and this we includes the consortium of reporters, open source experts, and others that was coordinated by Lighthouse Reports, whether what we published was true and whether we are truthful in what we say, rather than whether the events we describe are actually true and whether they happened. In order to do that, they actually tried to scrutinize the audiovisual material that we shared with them and that was already either way made public from public sources. Interestingly enough, they gave this footage to be corroborated by the Greek police, thus effectively cancelling their own independence by saying, like, okay, the Greek police and the Greek Coast Guard are accused of doing certain things, and they send them the material to scrutinize. The other thing that was really interesting was the choice of people they made as to who they would interview. So it ended up being like an exit poll or a filling of, and the questions were more relevant to how people would feel about Greece potentially securing its border, or how do people in the border areas feel about like whether Greece is doing enough to secure its borders, whether Greece is actually doing enough to prevent migration, whether Greece is doing enough to not allow people to enter. The other not surprising thing is the outcome of this investigation, which basically said, you know, these things didn't happen.
Allegations affecting Greece are clearly unfounded, rely on footage or testimonials provided from the country of departure. Numerous cases have been investigated, including by the European Union, and reports have found no evidence of any breach of EU fundamental rights.
The xenophobic instincts of society have been, in a way, cultivated by also institutional anomalies and anomalous practices from the Greek government regarding refugees and asylum seekers. And of course, in many occasions, the NGOs are targeted even by the government.
On the Greek side, it's almost impossible for NGOs to be active in the area, which is why we also take most of the testimonies when the people were returned to Turkey, and then we can meet them here and have them talk to us.
And we have seen announcements regarding some alarming situations in the Greek islands where the government advised refugees not to trust NGOs and trust only the government, for NGOs are lying to them and want to exploit them.
The targeting is mainly consisting of an accusation of being against Greece. The government has assumed its own responsibility to represent Greece in all matters. Then by government we mean specifically this administration. So this administration doesn't want anyone to speak ill of Greece in any way because they assume it as a personal attack. And if in all fairness one could say that New Democracy is not to be the only one blamed for the practices that Greece is doing, New Democracy is actually perceiving it as such. Everything is an attack towards New Democracy, and thus everything is perceived as an attack against the state, and even more as an attack against what Greece is deeply.
Ζήτημα κανόνων και μάλιστα υπερεπίγων είναι η τάχιστη ολοκλήρωση των διαδικασιών εξέτασης αίτησης ασύλου των μεταναστών που βρίσκονται ήδη στη χώρα και η επαναπροώθηση των μη ασυλούχων στην Τουρκία ή στις χώρες προέλευσής τους. Ζήτημα κανόνων, προσοχή, εδώ είναι η λογοδοσία, που γνωρίζω κύριε Υπουργέ ότι προχωρά γοργά, των μη κυβερνητικών οργανώσεων που οργίασαν την περίοδο 15-19, αλλά και ο έλεγχος από τη δικαιοσύνη εκείνων όπως η Aegean Boat Report, η Consolidated Rescue Group, η Forensic Architecture ή η Lighthouse Relief, που τι κάνουν, δίνουν τα στίγματα του λιμενικού σώματος και του πολεμικού ναυτικού αναπαράγοντας υλικό από τουρκικά UAV, θέτοντας σε κίνδυνο τους ήρωές μας, τα στελέχη που φυλάττουν τις σύγχρονες θερμοπύλες της Δύσης, διότι περί αυτού πρόκειται.
This is a typical response that when uncomfortable truths surface, these are planted by the Turkish authorities and they further the work of smugglers.
This is indeed very alarming, as the Greek state, in spite of stopping a problematic policy, which has criminal aspects as well, criminal law aspects as well, it does the exactly opposite thing and prosecutes the people who express their solidarity.
Let me be very clear here. If you are an NGO, a humanitarian worker coming to Greece to help people, you're extremely welcome. We work with tens and hundreds of NGOs in a lot of the camps. They're residents, they're helping people.
Turkey, to accuse these people of espionage, Minister, seems absurd.
Listen, if you find somebody at the borders with illegal radio equipment in frequencies which are military frequencies.
They're trying to save lives, Minister. These people are trying to save lives.
No, they're not trying to save lives. They're trying to ensure that smugglers send people through. They're part of some of them could be part of a network, and it's up to the police and the court to determine who is helping people and who is smuggling people. And calling yourself an NGO, it could mean many different things. It could mean all these well-known organizations that we respect their work so much and we work with them. And it can mean 3 people that have formed a small NGO and they have colleagues on the opposite side that send boat every day, and they coordinate from the Greek side to tell them where the Coast Guard boat is. When the Coast Guard vessel moves, then they call and say, okay, come, start now. This is called smuggling. Not in Greece, in every European country or every Western country. This is a critical difference, and thanks God, our courts are extremely competent, they're fully independent, and they take judgments on a case-by-case basis.
Basically, we started reporting about pushbacks in April 2020. And then afterwards, after half a year, we figured out that from May on, the Greek Secret Service had been surveilling us and 3 other NGOs. And then in September concluded their investigation into us. And basically, this was a criminal investigation into Chaussure and 3 other NGOs. And we are accused of forming and joining a criminal organization, violating state secrets, espionage, and facilitation of illegal entry, so smuggling but without profit. And so these 4 accusations have been brought to the public prosecutor in September by the Greek Secret Service, Police and Coast Guard. And the thing is that until now, we have not been contacted by the Greek authorities. It was just used in a defamation campaign in the media. And so basically, we are kind of waiting for news.
We have been at odds with the Greek state and with the vast majority of even civil society organizations, intellectuals, etc. from day one.
Se обсиднати со фантазијата дека во земјата не
First of all, I started by being an agent of the Pope because I was helping the Catholics, and an agent of the Jews because I fought anti-Semitism. And then, of course, agent of Soros and the Macedonians because I was working about them. The whole procedure, by the way, is totally funny because I have a case file and it breaks every single Greek law, let alone international law, about procedural things. I mean, the accusations against me and him are based on a statement by a foreigner who arrived on the island, whom we never talked to, never met, but actually the Coast Guard put on his statement who was his translator. Another Coast Guard officer, you can imagine. All the information they wanted to implicate us, but that was not even enough. Then they took out the phone of one guy and the WhatsApp. They cut out the initial discussion that we were communicating with him to register the previous pushback, and they pretended to communicate with him only when he was about to arrive to assist him. So they did all those crazy things which no decent court will ever uphold, but of course you don't know about courts in Greece, what will happen. By the way, I had never been to Kos until I had to go to make a defense statement. You can imagine that our criminal organization was magic, in the air. I've never met Tommy also in my life. I never met any of the my co-accused asylum seekers. They have never met Olsen or me, and they have only met among themselves. It's a smear campaign, that's all. There is a most famous case. The Human Rights Watch made a report about the border in Evros with plenty of material. And we submit to the prosecutor in Evros. And he filed it away because he said, anyway, the sources are not credible because they come from a Turkish state. The Human Rights Watch report was a Turkish state. And they can write those things, the prosecutors. There's no one ever punishes prosecutors or judges unless they do some corruption kind of things, or they never take judgments after 10 years. But when they do those kind of things, they get promotions. Still, here you are.
The Greek authorities are facing a very difficult task in containing the situation, and I want to thank the Greek border guards and the coast guards. I want to thank the civilians, the police, the servicemen and servicewomen, and I want to thank Frontex for that tireless effort.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On the reality of our work in Greece, we are implementing the biggest operations we have. So we have usually between 600 and 800 staff, border guards and coast guard officers deployed in Greece. The mission is to contribute to the border surveillance at sea, at land. It's to intercept irregular crossings, to detect, to intercept. When there are cases of search and rescue, then we have to support, because this is the role in the context of the Coast Guard. But of course, we are also a law enforcement actor, and we have to contribute to the fight against criminal activities, including the threat of terrorism.
In the beginning, we were really not sure about the level of Frontex involvement or about its involvement at all. That was back in 2016, 2017.
Then they asked who speak English, who speak Dutch.
يونان بس في كان فيهم ألمان بس ما حكوا معي. أنا اللي ضربني يوناني عم يحكي يوناني ما فهمت عليه.
One of the officer was talking Germany, and the other one was talking to our friend because he was in Italy before, and he was talking to him in Italy, and he said our friend did tell us, explain to us that later he was in Spain, that he lived in Italy, and now he came to work in here, in Greece border, to protect her like he did tell her.
As time goes by and as Frontex has become, Frontex presence has become even greater in both in the Evros region and the Aegean Islands, we have become pretty sure that at least they know.
We have several testimonies that where the respondents were able to describe clearly the uniforms of Frontex officers and the official uniforms with the blue Frontex armbands, apprehending them, beating them, and then handing them over to masked men. And those masked men with the balaclavas and dressed in black without official insignia, who then continued the whole pushback chain. And in some of those testimonies, the respondents were actually fluent in German, so they could not only tell us it was German that was being spoken, but they could also tell us clearly what was being spoken and that it was the native speakers who were speaking German. We do not have any evidence that Frontex officers in official uniforms were actually conducting the pushback at the river, but there is clear evidence that Frontex is part of this whole pushback chain. And there is strong reason to believe that Frontex officers are present during pushbacks at the river, but not in their official uniforms.
Frontex claims that they haven't witnessed any pushbacks, but how can that be true when we have thousands and thousands of testimonies of pushbacks happening, and we know that Frontex is present in that area? that's just a disconnect that can't happen.
Frontex has denied that it participates in border surveillance operations within the military area. They said that the Greek government did not include Frontex officers deployed in Evros in such operations, so they were mainly working on the checks along the main roads. So that had quite significant implications in terms of responsibility, because if they were not involved in surveillance operations patrolling along the river, so that means they could not be argued to be involved in pushbacks.
It's a kind of nice cat and mouse play, that Greece can just design military zones and then say for security reasons we cannot allow Frontex to go there, and that gives them carte blanche to do whatever they want in that military zone.
I'll mention very specifically a letter sent to Jossur, which stated, in the case of some people being stranded on an island on the river for several days, that Frontex teams were 32 kilometers away from the location as they were deployed elsewhere. And when I read this, I was like, there are more than one teams. They are stationed in different towns. So were they all 32 kilometers away? Exactly 32 kilometers away from the location of the incident? I don't know.
And I said, but if you hear these kinds of stories, are you able to go there? And are you able to also observe if more of these practices are happening? And they say, no. I mean, we can only go there where operational needs are. And the Greek border guards decide where the operational needs are. And I also said to them, look, but you have more responsibilities. Your task is not only assisting border control, but also assisting fundamental rights compliance. How can you make that true if you let yourself being limited? And he said, look, this is the regulation, and we are under the command of the border guards.
Since they are aware of the gross human rights violations that take place, they are legally obliged to address the matter to the EU and the Greek state. So in that matter, we can be sure that they are accomplices by their silencing.
There is no policy to directly or indirectly contribute or carry out violation of fundamental rights. We have a policy of fundamental rights within the agency. We are committed to that.
When I did the inquiry for the parliament, we also got in touch with whistleblowers who also told us when they came there for debriefings on the islands, and that at the moment that they arrived in Greece, their coordinator said, look, you're not going to have any task during the next 3 months because no one arrives at the island. Just sit down and relax because there's no work for you. So they were very much aware of the pushbacks, but they were simply left elsewhere.
All these issues were known within Frontex because they were raised by the Fundamental Rights Officer and Consultative Forum, but nothing happened.
If you believe your rights have been violated by someone involved in any Frontex activity, Frontex has a tool for you.
In terms, for example, the complaint mechanism, which is one of the key ones in terms of addressing fundamental rights violations, I think around 2/3 of the complaints are not admissible. And there are cases, for example, Evros, no complaint has been ever submitted. And the report by the Fundamental Rights Officer after her visit in 2019 raised some very serious concerns about the lack of availability of complaints forms and information about complaints in border guard stations and police stations in the area. Only a person directly affected can submit a complaint, and the complaint cannot be anonymous, make it difficult in practice because people might be afraid of submitting a complaint because they think that it might have an impact on their asylum application or the authorities taking action against them. So there are issues with how these mechanisms have been established within the legal framework, and there are issues of implementation as well. In my opinion, all these mechanisms and talk about human rights and stressing repeatedly compliance with human rights, they're all a fig leaf. More broadly speaking, within the general policy, migration policy of the European Union, with its focus on controlling the external border and not letting people enter EU territory, it is impossible not to have fundamental rights violations. It's a violent border policy where violence and violations of rights are part of it. They are inevitable. They are not an aberration. They are not something that occasionally happens that is against the rules. They are part of the policy.
I would like to thank the Parliament for this debate. I feel the same urgency and deep concern that many of you have expressed today. Behind each report of pushbacks is a potential threat to the right to asylum, a right we need to protect. The number and the continuity of the reports is alarming. I repeat, there can be no normalization or legislation of pushbacks in the European Union. It's also important to stress that every day, every night, border guards, policemen, policewomen are protecting our external borders in compliance with EU law and fundamental rights. So when we rightly criticize pushbacks and urge each member state to thoroughly investigate allegations and take actions to establish the fact and trust, we should also thank all brave border guards and policemen and women. In their everyday work, they show that there are no contradiction in strong protection of our external borders and strong protection of our values.
Although this funding needs to comply with fundamental right law, the way it is used, and ensuring that no fundamental rights law is violated, we have not seen any action from the Commission or any review about how the funding has been used to construct infrastructures that affect movement and might be implicated in violations of the borders.
in public, she always then refers to that monitor mechanism. And also Commission officials tell us, like, look, it's not us that need to monitor. For the implementation of the funding, you have national monitoring bodies doing that. But who are in those monitoring bodies? Officials of the governments.
The fundamental rights officer of the ministry, who is supposed to control the respect of fundamental rights from the ministry, is in the ministry. So it's basic legal, how can I call it, principles. I mean, you cannot be the one that is controlled and controlling at the same time. When we try to put to light this legal paradox, the answer from members of the Commission was, I wouldn't get into a rash judgment because he is a nice person.
Could you tell us a little bit about this process and how this looks in practice, in the evaluation of these?
There is no practice. I mean, I found out that we are on the list when you sent me the link. So I know that there have been some meetings with NGOs, not with us. We participated in some meetings, but not in this context.
So there's sometimes one NGO or whatever, but not, having an influential role. So it's also based on a kind of trust in the member states themselves, who have to control themselves, and the Commission stays away from it. The Commission is simply relying on the same officials that are accused of violating the fundamental rights to monitor and to evaluate if everything goes well. Look, that's not the way it can work. That's not the way that you can really seriously fulfill your role as guardian of the treaties.
It doesn't seem to me to be very logical that the EU is financing, let's say, technology or drones or surveillance equipment, but refuses to fund the fence itself. We're talking about an integrated approach in terms of the external border management, and of course, fences should be included in that financing package.
Υπάρχουν και θαλάσσια σύνορα όπως και χερσαία στον Εύρο. Και στον Εύρο έχουμε απτύξει. Εκεί κάποιος, ό,τι υπάρχει ο πράκτης κτλ. Μπορεί να περάσει. Μπορεί να περάσει. Αν, να το πούμε και έτσι, όπως λέτε και εσείς, κάνει pushback. Αν βάλουμε λοιπόν το πράκτη, δεν θα γίνεται κανένα όπως το λέτε. Σωστά, δεν θα υπάρχει ανάγκη.
Άρα βάζουμε το φράκτη για να σταματήσουμε τα pushbacks.
Όχι, βάζουμε το φράκτη γιατί εμείς πιστεύουμε σαν κυβέρνηση ότι η χώρα αυτή έχει σύνορα.
Η διαφωνία με την Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή είναι τι είναι επιλέξιμο. Η Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή θέλει να είναι επιλέξιμα τα συνοδά έργα, δηλαδή τα φυλάκια, τα συστήματα επιτήρησης. Αυτά είναι απολύτως εξασφαλισμένα. Εμείς λέμε ότι πρέπει να είναι επιλέξιμος και ο ίδιος ο φράκτης, τα σίδερα που βλέπετε. Η ουσία είναι ότι στην περίπτωση που δεν εγκριθεί αυτό που εμείς ζητάμε, υπάρχουν τα 100 εκατομμύρια, είναι απαραίτητα έτσι κι αλλιώς για την επέκταση του φράκτη και γι' αυτό θα μπορέσουμε να κάνουμε και την τρίτη επέκταση.
The problem is that the Commission is trying to explain that the money that is being used is not used for the walls, but it is used for all the elements or supporting structures around it, which makes it increasingly difficult to distinguish between saying that we don't finance with European money these walls while we are actually contributing to a war.
In the end, it's the Commission also being complicit in using everything that's necessary to prevent irregular migration. That they see this maybe as a kind of collateral damage. I mean, it sounds very harsh, but it's after all those years that I really think because if they would take it seriously, they would have undertaken action a long time ago already. I mean, the Commission puts a task force there, which is observing a lot, and then everything that the task force leads to the Commission, it ends somewhere, because it doesn't lead to any clear dialogues or comments or condemnations towards the Greek government. At the same time, if NGOs or anyone else files complaints with the European Commission, the Commission said, oh no, but we have a task force. So they also set up constructions themselves in order not to efficiently take action to stop these violations. So how can you interpret differently than they accept this to happen?
We have seen efforts by different member states not only not to stop pushbacks, but in certain cases to incorporate them into future European Union law, to make it easier to deport people from border areas without following legal process.
Above all, we need to get an agreement on the pact to protect our borders, to prevent pushbacks, and to uphold fundamental rights, and to never allow to normalize pushbacks. Thank you.
Do you see anything suggesting that the international factors will push these countries at the border, Italy, Greece, Hungary, Croatia, Poland, Slovakia to some extent, to change? EU is moral accomplice to every crime committed by Greece concerning pushbacks. Every crime. Because Greece does it in its name, and EU says, if it doesn't say bravo, it looks, and it's well known that when you look whereas you can prevent a violation, you are liable, and at the political level, you're politically liable.
You have all worked very hard to achieve this, at impossible hours and with much energy and enthusiasm.
A reversal of roles? Yeah. Oh, welcome again. Yeah. How are you? So good to see you.
Finally, we encourage the managing authority to continue with the good practices identified during the 2014-2020 programming period, as well as to build on any new recommendations that can be made in the context of the future monitoring committees, with a view to achieving the most effective possible implementation of the programs, hence the most effective use of EU funds. Thank you very much again, and I wish everyone a fruitful continuation of work, and we look forward for continuous good cooperation.
Η αντιμετώπιση του κόσμου είναι πάντα η ίδια. Όταν είσαι λάθρομετανάστης, δεν είσαι αποδεκτός στη χώρα του. Άλλο είναι ο μετανάστης, να μην μπερδεύουμε τις λέξεις. Η αντιμετώπιση του κόσμου εδώ, στο νομό μας, στο νομό Εύρω, είναι η ίδια. Εάν δούμε άνθρωπο να κινδυνεύει, οποιοσδήποτε είναι αυτός, θα πάει να τον βοηθήσει. Αλλά δεν θα επιτρέψει σε κανέναν, να μπει μέσα στο σπίτι του, να πάει να τον ληστέψει ή να τον κάνει οτιδήποτε κακό στην οικογένειά του.
I think we need to take into account the discourses put forward by both political actors and the media in Greece, which construct people on the move as a threat to the security of Greece, to the safety of population, to national identity. And these discourses have been around for decades. So a lot of people are convinced that people on the move are a threat, one way or the other. And for that reason, they support stronger measures for guarding the border. It is a way to keep risks away from Greece.
In fact, in Greek military imaginary, the Evros is often called as the Anachoma of Greece, which is a literal translation of embankment. So the river is an embankment against invasion from Turkey in the Greek imagination, but also more recently against what the far right sees as an invasion, as a hybrid invasion, as it was described in March, from migrants and refugees.
Again, I wish I did not have to spend, much more than 2% of my GDP on defense. But unfortunately, we live in a precarious neighborhood with a much larger country than us that's also, been behaving aggressively. I have to make sure that I'm also ready for a renewed period of tension after the elections.
How would you deal with that?
In the same way we have dealt with it so far.
I think it's difficult to think of, well, if not your home, the place where you come from, being a theater of violence, and has been a theater of violence for many decades. And also to realize that people in the area live side by side with this violence without necessarily affecting their daily lives or the way they think about the border or migration. Yeah, it's food for thought.
We have to ask ourselves how much we are far of being a human, because all what they face is not a human act, all that violence, all that humiliating. They are actually running from that. But all what they face is all of that.
فيش حاجة آمنة في غزة. تكون انت نايم فجأة ما بتلاقي إلا صواريخ بتنزل. يعني الوضع مأساة في غزة. يعني الناس كلها، الشباب اللي زيي أنا في غزة كنت، كلهم يعني ناووا يرحلوا من الوضع. يعني احنا فيش، كل حرب بنخلص منها بعد سنة ترجع حرب تانية. والحرب لا بتعرف هذا ولا بتعرف هذا، قصف عشوائي، شهداء. يعني آخر حرب اللي صارت 45 شهيد في بناية واحدة، عمارة سكنية واحدة.
وصلت للقرار بعد اعتقالي صراحة. أنا كنت عم أدخن سجاير، فوصلوا إنه مسكون الدواعش وقتها وطفوا السجاير بإيدي، هاي الإشارات اللي بإيدي. فوقتها إنه قررت إني أهرب، إنه يعني ما ظل إشي غير إنه المهرب، يعني إنه أخرج من هذا المكان. لأنه كانت ما تسمى حياة، عدم الحياة يعني.
العيشة بالنسبة للعيشة في غزة، إحنا يعني إلنا أكثر من 12 سنة حاصرين في غزة. الوضع الاقتصادي كل سنة بينزل لتحت. يعني الحياة في غزة صارت فيش حياة، معدومة.
يعني قلت لك بسوريا آخر شيء في طيب البيت شادر هيك منها الشوب يقتلوا، الهدوم لصق على جسمه، الذبان مليون بالليل بق وبالنهار الذبان طلع. يعني بتريدي دواء تداوينه عزيت الأصلي بنلقعه. بسط الهدوم أحيانا قصان أقدر أدرج. آخر شيء هدومه ما عم نحسب نقدر نشتري هدوم، نقدر نفوت على سوقنا نشتري هدوم. تعرف هدومه بنقعم يومين لأقدر أغسلن بالفرشاية لأغسلن. يعني أنت بقى رايك واحد بدشر بلد وهيك شطرة بترة.
I actually met with the co-founder of Dressur. She finding me that I can help other refugees who are pushed back from Greece or Bulgaria, both of them. So I'm staying here trying to give help as much as I can. Well, actually, as I told you, Dressur is the only organization that works from this side to help and provide all the help for the refugees who are pushed back, like accommodation, food, and clothes sometimes, because they sometimes turn them back nude. So I'm just staying in here trying to provide help as much as I can, because I don't want to let people, suffer what I've been through.
We're gonna take you to seminar. هي منظمة اسمها جسور. المنظمة هي معنية بتوثيق حالات العنف على الحدود. يعني شو صار لما حضرتي على اليونان، كيف تعاملوا معك الجندرمة، كيف يعني التفاصيل اللي يعني كيف يعني أخذوك هالكلام.
We are here for supply what they need, something like transfer money, something like they want to eat something. We help them all the way. One day, police came to control and took the refugees, take the refugees for the one of the refugees jumped from the second floor to the street because of afraid of police. And when we realized that police went, we take care of him here for 1-2 months. Because of people don't want the refugees here. Smallest issues, even in the smallest issues, they call the police and there's a problem. They say that, and the police comes here not only for control. They have some different motivations. I think everybody knows that. What is the motivation? So actually, some things even it's not an issue, but people can call the police. There's an issue. There's a problem here because of the refugees are here. If refugees are not here, they don't call the police. There's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Did you have many of these incidents in the past?
Couldn't understand.
Do you have many of these incidents in the past?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
But you keep on proceeding?
Yes.
JUSO was the only organization in Turkey doing that, the only organization on the other side of the EU's external borders. And it was a really hard decision to end that. And we did face a lot of criticism also from other organizations and volunteers in Turkey specifically, saying it's irresponsible of us to end our operations because nobody else can fill that gap. It was, we discussed for 3 weeks if we can continue in any other way. And basically, none of us wanted to quit. We just decided to stick to our principles that we have given ourselves in the beginning, which is that safety is the priority for both our team members and people we support. And since that was impossible for us to guarantee anymore, we had to end it. With October 1st, 2022, JUSO were dissolved.
Look, in the one boat, it's about 15, 20 people. If we have something in the river, it's very easy to drowning someone. And after that, the river, it's not like the sea. The body, it's the depth. And for this reason, we found the bodies after 2 months, 3 months. For us, it's very, very difficult to make identification in these bodies. Because the situation in the bodies is very bad. We haven't one fresh face to make a photo and I give the photo to the police or the embassies or International Committee of Red Cross. We haven't face, we have nothing. We make identification only with DNA. First of all, we must have found some personal belongings. If we have some personal belongings, if we have one ring, the family, they know the ring. It's not problem. It's important for me. Why? Because if they know the ring, I have DNA from the body. I take DNA from the families and I have official identification. The bodies stay here about 12 months in the container outside, and after that, only with one unique number, we buried here somewhere in one cemetery here in Greece in the area Evros. And we have one unique number from the body. I have the same number from the DNA samples, and the same number is from all documents. if I have identification after 5 years, I know where exactly is the body, and I will come to give the body to the families. Because, look, someone who lives the father and mother who lives in somewhere in Afghanistan, Pakistan, they don't know where is the Department of Forensic Medicine in Alexandroupolis. And they don't know what happened with their son. They don't know nothing.
I thank Greece for being our European Aspida in these times.
Translate Aspida as shield.
Greece consistently implements a strict but fair migration policy, giving international protection to those who are entitled to stay, but at the same time returning with safety and dignity those who do not meet that criteria.
We do not have a rescue task, we have a search task, but this search task is an outcome of our deployment for border guarding. So we do not deploy primarily for search and not for rescue at all.
And of course, every EU agency have to comply to EU law and international law of fundamental rights. That goes without saying.
Prime Minister Mitsotakis, when at last will you stop lying? Lying about pushbacks, lying about what's happening with the refugees in Greece. Please don't insult mine and neither the intelligence of all the journalists in the world. There has been overwhelming evidence and you keep denying and lying. This is like narcissistic abuse. Why are you not honest? Why don't you say, Brussels left us alone. We waited for 6 years. Nobody did anything. We need to relocate. They don't do it now. I have my say. And yes, I do cruel, barbarian pushbacks.
Pushbacks.
Pushbacks. Pushing them back.
Pushbacks. Pushing back migrants.
Known as a pushback.
Violent pushback.
Pushbacks.
Thousands and thousands of testimonies.
More operational than ever.